if you're getting feedback that you're a little bit too much of this or not enough of that, that can be a good sign that there's something going on with managing gender expectation.
Welcome to Unleash Your True Value, a Breaking Money Silence podcast where professional women flip the script on self-doubt, ditch the discount mindset, and start owning their worth like the rock stars they are. Each episode is packed with real talk, practical tips, and the occasional mic drop to help you charge what you're worth and earn what you truly deserve. So buckle up, grab your coffee, because it's time to unleash your true value and make some noise while you're at it. Now, here's your host, Kathleen Burns Kingsbury.
Hi, this is Kathleen Burns Kingsbury, and I am the host of Unleash Your True Value, a Breaking Money Silence podcast. And I am excited today about our guest and our topic. We're going to be talking with Loala McCann. She's the owner of Intrinsic Coaching and Consulting, and she's here to help guide us on how to walk the tightrope of being a woman in business. Now, how do you know if you have been walking the tightrope? Well, have you ever been told that you need to soften your edges? Or maybe that you're just too much? Or conversely, on the other side, maybe you've been told you're a solid member of the team, but you just don't seem assertive enough to actually lead? If that's the case, then you might be walking the tightrope. And Loala is here to guide us and to offer both her lived experience as well as insights into how she coaches women around this topic. We'll have a conversation on what this tightrope looks like, what are the signs and symptoms, and most importantly, how to handle this difficult situation and still be able to achieve your career goals. Welcome, Loala, to the podcast.
Thank you, Kathleen. I'm a fan of your podcast, so it's nice to be here and be able to share a topic that is really important to me. I think because of all of the experiences, all of the heartbreak, all of the screw ups that I've had around this. And the hope is that with a little bit more knowledge and discussion and support, women out there can walk this with a little bit more ease than I had found in most of my corporate career.
Well, sometimes I feel like I'm a bull in a china shop when it comes to the corporate environment, which is why I've worked for myself for over 2 decades. So I think chances are I'm going to identify with some of this, and I know our listeners will as well. But before we get into, your experiences, tell us a little bit more about what is the tightrope bias? Because to be honest with you, I hadn't heard of it framed that way. And how prevalent is it?
Sure. Yeah, and you may have heard this type of gender bias called by other names. It's also often referred to as the double bind, I think for good reason. And one study found that about 73% of women identify with having challenges with the tightrope. Interestingly, most of the majority of those that identified having issues with it also skewed more in one direction. So when we think about the gender bias at play here, it's a set of expectations for women, and they are dueling and oppositional expectations. So on the one hand, you can imagine women are held to traditionally female types of characteristics and traits. So we are expected to be likable, right? In short, we're expected to be collaborative and supportive and a good team player and empathetic. And all of that adds up to likability, right? And so if I want to be long-term successful in a company, I have to be seen as likable. It's like the key to play. On the other hand, though, if I want to be a leader, I am also held to a set of characteristics that are traditionally masculine. And so that's everything around being commanding, being assertive, sometimes even being aggressive. Men are expected to be authoritative, and so are leaders, right? These are traits that are heralded for good leadership. And so what ends up happening is, as a woman leader, I'm expected to do both. Sometimes I'm expected to do both at the same time, even though it's very hard to be empathetic and commanding at the same time, right? And so that's where the rub lies, that, it's really hard to know, well, do I need to show up in this way or in this way in any given situation? And different environments have slightly different expectations as well, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation. And I think I've heard of it referred to as double bind, but I like the tightrope because it really does feel like a dangerous balancing act that so many women have to do. Tell me a little bit about how this affects men, if it does at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I think that men certainly are held to standards around gender as well, right? I mentioned some of the characteristics that men are expected to exhibit, particularly in the workplace. But I see that as a single standard and not a double standard, right? And so that's where it's a little bit different for women in the workplace, because men have one specific set of characteristics that tend to go together that are expected of them. Women have both. And so I've certainly seen where I've known men that have not been promoted or have not been offered a job because they're not exhibiting enough of those traditionally masculine behaviors. Being, oh, he's such a nice guy, but I just don't know if he's assertive enough to be in this role. So I do see that happen. But for women, it can be much more challenging to manage two standards that are in opposition.
Yes, and I also think for men who are listening in, even if you haven't experienced this, I think it's really important to know if you're going to be a male ally and you're going to help attract or retain women to whatever field that you're in, that this bind kind of exists, or this tightrope exists. Now, in the opening, you said something about you messing up. So tell us a little bit about your experience with the tightrope and give us a sense of, how do we know if we're walking it or not? Because, sometimes women just think, oh, this is just the way it is, as opposed to, hey, maybe this isn't fair.
Yeah, well, I certainly thought it was just the way it was. And unfortunately, a lot of my career, I thought it was just a me problem. I thought, I was getting this feedback in different sides of the tightrope. I was getting feedback, oh, you need to change this, you need to change that. And I thought it was just me, right? I didn't have any mentors or bosses that were aware of it enough to be able to talk to me about it in a way that made sense, that, hey, this is more of a structural issue. This is a systematic set of expectations, and it's not a Lola personality problem, right? And so, early on in my career, I was told after like an early career promotion in HR that my clients didn't like me, right? They just, you're too stoic. Your clients don't like you. And that, of course, was a big blow because I was so excited about the promotion and I wanted to do so well. And I was really buttoned up, right? I was nervous about doing a good job, and I was all business. And that was a good lesson to learn at that point in my career, that, hey, I needed to take time for people to know me as a person and bring in those traits, the likability traits that are authentic to me, in order to connect with these clients so that they could listen to all the good advice that I had. And so that was an example on one side of it. But, on the other side, I've done super silly things too. Like I got promoted to the head of my department, right? This was like, I've arrived. I was working for a medical device company, and it was an internal promotion. Everyone around me was congratulating me and saying, wow, this is so cool. And you know what I did? I responded to most of those congratulations by saying, wow, aren't I lucky? I'm just so lucky, right? And at the time, I didn't know, I wasn't conscious of it. I didn't know what I was doing or why. But there was a strategy there, though. So in hindsight, I was very worried about, this internal rise that I had in the company. I was worried about my likability. I was worried that people weren't going to feel connected with me anymore. They might think that I had a big ego about the situation. And so I was deflecting some of those congratulations to try to protect myself and my likability. Now, it really was a detrimental type of strategy at that point, because of all the women around me who heard that message underneath it, that, hey, maybe I didn't deserve that promotion. Maybe I wasn't the best person for that job, right? There was that message, or just as bad, hey, if you want to get promoted, it's just going to be luck, right? Like,
Well,
so
let me jump in here, though. I think we're socialized as women to basically be humble, to not, because we're often so socialized that to put relationships first, that we don't want to make the other person feel uncomfortable. And I hear the lucky in so many different aspects of women's lives. It's kind of in the same bucket as apologizing when there's no need to apologize. There's a way in which we play small. And so in looking back and noticing that behavior, what would you recommend somebody do if they go, oh, I say I'm lucky all the time, or maybe I'm too buttoned up? Like, how can it feels crazy making to me. I mean, I guess I'm happy I'm an entrepreneur because I feel like this comes up when I'm a consultant in a corporate environment, but I can kind of dodge the bullet most of the time. So, like, what are the signs in addition to I'm lucky, or, what did you find for yourself that really helped you? I don't know if it's manage the tightrope, live with the tightrope. I don't know how you would frame it.
yeah. So as far as the signs go, if you're getting feedback that you're a little bit too much of this or not enough of that, that can be a good sign that there's something going on with managing gender expectations. And it tends to be a commentary on your behaviors and your personality, but really the source of the issue can be traced back to what are the expectations of my behavior based on my gender. And so that's a bit of a clue when you're in this space. Now, what to do about it? I think the first thing is to get really conscious about what it is and understand, I can look back on some of these behaviors that I've had and say, oh, this was my strategy here, but I wasn't very conscious of it at the time. And I think it gets better when we can name it, we can recognize it, and then we can be really conscientious about the strategies that we deploy, right? And so maybe I would have chosen that same strategy at that point, maybe I wouldn't have, but I didn't even really think about what I was doing. And so when we can start to understand this better, then we get more aware and we can really think about what we're doing. So that's my first recommendation, is that, early career, nobody, for me anyways, nobody was talking about this. I didn't have any mentors who were sharing what they were experiencing and how they were managing it. And I didn't really get it. And so reading about it, listening about it, talking to others about it, asking them, what have you experienced? When I get groups of women together live and I give this talk, I always leave room for group discussion. And because women have so many stories, right? We have so many stories of these experiences, and some of us have figured out a few things that work. And so it's nice to hear from others what they've tried. So that's really important. And then, beyond talking to other women, forming allies, I would say getting conscious about our strategies and trying different things out, right? Where can we flex our behavior and understanding, in this situation, I need a little bit more likability. In this situation, I know I'm going to be expected to show up as authoritative. And within both of those realms, like, what feels authentic to me? Now, it might not always be comfortable. There might be a stretch there. And I think the stretch is okay, as long as it's within what feels like us authentically, because I can tell you, I love I love helping people, right? And so I can authentically have likable behaviors, but I can be really commanding. I can be really take charge. I can be really assertive. And I feel comfortable in that space too, but it's taken me time to get there.
Yeah. And one of the things, well, there's two things. One is I identify a bit with some of the coaching I do around negotiation. There's this myth that women aren't good at negotiation. Well, that isn't true, but a lot of times women either haven't had practice negotiating, or when they go into a negotiation, they face a gender bias where it's more important to be likable than it is to negotiate on your behalf. And often what I say to my clients, and I'd be curious kind of what your thoughts are, no matter what the situation, it's, how do you accept that this is the reality right now? And how do you then, like you said, develop a strategy or be conscious that you need a strategy? One of the things I didn't hear you say, and I'm interested in your viewpoint on this, Lola, is we need to make systematic changes. Like we need to train people how to do performance reviews without falling into this bias where we're talking about a woman's personality, but we're talking about a man's achievements in the reviews. I know that's a whole nother ball of wax, but tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate the question because I think it's a given, right? I think that we are so far away from where our mothers thought we would be
Yes.
that, yes, systematic change needs to happen. And in the HR leadership positions that I've held, I have done my darndest to chip away at that systematic change that needs to occur, especially, you mentioned performance reviews, but also promotional decisions, even access to opportunities to shine even outside of a promotion. So yes, the short answer is there is so much to be done around structural change. And in the meantime, here we sit and have to manage it, right? And the challenges are going to keep coming and the change seems to be very slow. And so,
Yes, very, very slow. So, the thing that stands out for me in terms of, confidence and feeling good about yourself and being authentic is, and we'll go back to your example, when you felt like it was a Lola problem, I mean, that must have felt crummy because it feels like there's something wrong. And I can identify with this. There's something wrong with you as opposed to this is a systematic issue, but it's the reality and I need to do something about it. So how did you move forward? Like, was there a turning point for you? Was there an aha moment? Was there a mentor? Like, what helped you go, wait a second, this isn't a Lola problem?
yeah, I don't know if you're going to like this answer, but the place where I really turned the corner is I left the corporate world and started my own darn company.
Yep.
And partly it was because I was sick and tired of the pace of change. And I was tired of the headwinds in my face every day just to have an equal seat at the table.
Yeah, it's tiring. I mean, and when you say I don't like that answer, I like any answer that's truthful. And I also really celebrate and work with a lot of female entrepreneurs who have taken the skills that they've learned in corporate and done exactly what you've done and said, you know what, I'm at a point where I don't want to put up with this anymore.
Yeah.
And or I'm going to choose when I put up with it. So I think it's a great strategy, and I'm sure it's a much more complicated than that. But at a high level, you decided, you know what, I don't want to put up with this anymore. So that's a choice. And I think people listening in, if you feel like you're experiencing the tightrope, yes, while you're working there, be strategic, be conscious. And it's also an option that you don't have to put up with it. You could find another firm where maybe it's not so strong, or you could start your own consulting company. But in the meantime, I know you have other tips besides, being aware of it and being strategic and reading about it. What other tips do you have, or how do you work with clients around this particular issue?
Yeah. And, this is partly why I'm a coach. And I see that some of the systematic change will be this trend where we see more and more women going out and doing the same things that they were doing in the corporate world, but doing it on their own, right? Because then suddenly we get to call the shots, we get to make the calls about who we work with. And so a lot of the work that I do with women is really starting with understanding what some of the dynamics around them are all about, and that it's not just a problem with their behavior, because that can feel really isolating. It can also feel like, gosh, what am I supposed to do about if my personality is wrong? I can't change my personality, really, right?
Nor should we have to for a
Right.
job, right?
Yeah. So, this is part of working with women is helping them understand what are the dynamics at play. And not every environment has this pervasive bias, right? The industry that you come from, Kathleen, the industry that I come from, these are pretty male-dominated organizations without a lot of women leaders at the top. And so I would say the bias was there pretty prevalently, probably for both of us. But there are environments out there where you're not going to experience as much of this, and you're able to be yourself pretty naturally and show your leadership in your own way. But for women who are still in these places that tend to have a lot of this challenge that companies being in the environment, you know, understanding what what feels doable within this situation for me, right? And I mentioned before, like I think the stretch is okay sometimes. Like we got to push ourselves out of our comfort zone a little bit. Building up our likability is an important investment. It's like putting money in that bank, right? And what happens is if we establish ourselves as likable, there's a lot that we can go and do on the authoritative or the assertive side. I love to tell this story about the colleague who I had a peer who, during a presentation I was giving, he kind of leaned over to my male boss at the time and like gave him like the wink wink nudge nudge thing, and like he was clearly cracking a joke in the middle of my presentation, and I have no idea what he said, right? But you can be darn sure that the next morning, as soon as he got into work, because he came in early all the time, I was waiting for him to have a conversation about how unacceptable that was and how it made me feel. And sure, I was vulnerable about it. I told him, how that impacted me, but I was also very stern, like this can't happen again. We're colleagues and we support each other, and I don't want to see this kind of behavior again. And the reason I was able to do that is because I had put plenty of deposits in that likability bank before that conversation ever happened. And so we were able to get through it, and our relationship was fine. Maybe it was better after that, and so finding those opportunities and the ways that you like to be supportive of other people, for me it's like sitting down and really listening. That's one way that I support other people, and it's always been just a natural thing that I like to do. Being empathetic, really just hearing them out and understanding how they're doing. But it's
I
different for
love that.
everybody.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. I love that story because it really highlights that, being likable isn't necessarily a bad thing. I know there's a lot of pressure for women to be likable, but in itself, there is a way in which if you develop a relationship and someone, whether it's your clients, your colleagues, your boss, whoever, you come to have a good relationship, then when something like that happens, it's important to figure out how to address it and address it appropriately. But it sounds like, and I like this term, like you had likability points in the bank, and that allows you to learn and grow. And so what I'm hearing is that there's a leadership and development opportunity. There's also, and I think it's really important, and that's part of the reason I have a podcast and also have different types of groups than you have, but have these groups of women, for us to give voice to it and for us to not be isolated. Now, if someone is giving voice, they're working at having strategies, they kind of listen to this podcast and go, oh, maybe I need to work at walking that tightrope a little bit better, as long as it exists. What if none of that works for them? Like,
Yeah.
what tips do you have for somebody who needs some support? Because it's okay if you can't do this alone. It sometimes becomes hard to do it alone.
And I actually don't think we should do it alone. That is a really hard road to travel. And so absolutely, I would say don't give up, right? Don't give up, because you're not the only person experiencing this. And there are lots of examples of successful women who have figured out the balance for them. I love the group that you run, right, Kathleen? That having a small group of peers that's facilitated by a professional, that is a wonderful support system that could do wonders for someone who's really hitting a wall with this. One-on-one coaching, I think, is great too. It's part of why I'm a coach. It's part of why I specialize in working with women leaders, because I really care about us as a group having equal representation in every aspect of life. And so that's really important to me. So mentors also, if you don't have a good mentor, start asking, right? Because people want to help, and mentors come in all shapes and forms. And it doesn't have to be the woman whose career track looks exactly the way you want it to look, yours to look, right? There are a lot of ways that different types of mentors can help us.
Yeah. And when I think about my own career, I've certainly used coaching. in terms of my own growth, a lot of private coaching, because I tend to get distracted in a group, but I love facilitating groups. And also, when I look back, mentors that I consciously selected, and then people who were in my life who were just sending positive messages or helping me work out a difficult situation. I think what's really great is that you are providing an opportunity for women to talk about it, whether that's in a presentation, whether that's private coaching or the groups that you run. So I would love for you to answer one more question before I switch gears and ask more about your business. I have every guest finish this sentence, and I'm always kind of curious what people are going to say. So finish the sentence, dare to be blank.
Yeah. I'm going to say dare to be in community, right?
Oh.
Be in community with others about this problem. Talk to your male colleagues about it. Start to share with them how this is landing on you. Talk to your female colleagues. Find a peer group. Find a mentor. But be in community. You don't need to do it by yourself.
I love that. And you're the first one on the podcast to dare to be in community. So I really love that. That's so you and so the work that you do. I know we've only scratched the surface in terms of the Tightrope. And so for people that want to know more about you and your work, may want to work with you, tell us a little bit about where they can find out about your work and anything you want them to know about your practice.
Yeah, so I guess the best place to go is my website, which is intrinsicnow.com. And that has my story and the services that I offer. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My first name is spelled Loala, so that's usually an easy indicator for I'm the only Lola spelled like koala out there. So, and then there's a couple places on my website. You can sign up for my newsletter that I offer monthly around generally personal and leadership development topics. And I tell a lot of stories in there. And then if you'd like to reach out and have a conversation, right, we can book time together. You can do that directly through my website. That's complimentary for 30 minutes just to hear your story and what challenges you're having and maybe make some recommendations.
Well, I have to tell you, it's so great to have you on the podcast. It was long overdue to learn about this particular gender bias and how we can kind of manage it. And also, yes, I agree there needs to be systematic change as well. But at this point, let's do what we can and move forward in community together. And for anyone that is interested in reaching out to Lola, I have to tell you, there is a calming presence every time I talk to her that I think she probably provides her clients as well. And I really appreciate you talking about this issue, breaking money silence with me around it. I hope people will follow up and check out your work. We'll put a bunch of stuff in the show notes, so we'll make it easy to follow up. And thanks very much for your time and your expertise.
Thank you, Kathleen.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Unleash Your True Value. I hope you're feeling inspired, empowered, and ready to own your worth unapologetically. Remember, your value isn't up for negotiation. It's time to embrace it, amplify it, and let the world know exactly what you bring to the table. If you're ready to take things even further, you don't have to do it alone. As a money mindset and business coach, Kathleen specializes in helping professional women like you rewrite their money stories, step fully into their power, and take their businesses to the next level. Visit kbkwealthconnection.com to set up a free coaching discovery call. Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and leave us a 5-star review. Until next time, ditch that discount mindset and unleash your true value like the rock star you are.